Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive curated specifically for you. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the world of computer storage.
It's something I know a lot of you have been asking about.
We've got some really cool source material to work with today, actually.
Oh yeah, what is it?
Well, it's a transcript from, I think, the 4th episode of a video series about building and modding computers.
Really? So we get like a behind-the-scenes look at how these things work.
Exactly, and the source jumps right into the good stuff.
Like what?
The different types of storage you're likely to come across: eMMC, SSD, and HDD.
Right, because it can get kind of confusing. What is each one best for?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So should we start with eMMC then?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so eMMC stands for Embedded Multimedia Card. These are usually found in smaller, more like compact systems.
Does the source give any examples?
Yeah, actually, they talk about the Odroid computer as one example, and the eMMC modules, they use range in size from a small 8 GB all the way up to 256 GB.
So when I see eMMC, am I thinking about something like the storage you'd find built into, say, my phone?
Exactly. That's a really good way to think about it. It's efficient. It's integrated for those specific devices.
Right. But maybe not ideal if you want to store like your entire music library or something.
Yeah, you probably want something a bit more robust for that.
Okay, that makes sense. So if eMMC is the compact option, where do SSDs and HDDs fit into all this?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. SSDs or solid-state drives, those are like the speed demons of the storage world.
Speed demons, huh? I like it. Tell me more.
They use flash memory, kind of similar to what you find in a USB flash drive, but on a much larger and much faster scale.
Okay, so it's like a supercharged flash drive.
Yeah, exactly. And the real key difference is that SSDs, they don't have any moving parts.
Oh, right, because it's all electronic, isn't it?
Precisely. And that makes them way faster and more durable than those old spinning hard drives.
So no more worrying about your computer sounding like a jet engine about to take off.
Exactly. It's a much smoother and quieter experience. And then on the other side, you have the HDDs.
The HDDs, the hard disk drives, right?
Yeah. Those are the ones that have been around forever, those traditional spinning disk drives.
The classics.
Exactly. They're generally cheaper than SSDs, especially when you need a lot of storage space. But because they have those moving parts, they're a bit slower.
And probably a bit more fragile if you drop your computer or something, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. So it's a bit of a trade-off, speed and durability with SSDs versus capacity and cost-effectiveness with HDDs.
Okay, so it seems like the type of storage is important, but the source also mentions how that storage connects to your computer, and that's a whole other can of worms.
It really is, and that's where SATA and M.2 come in, which I'm sure some of you have heard of.
All right, so SATA versus M.2, this is where we start talking about serious speed limits for our data, right?
You got it.
So what are we working with here? What are the differences?
So let's break it down. SATA, which stands for Serial ATA, is like the standard connection for both SSDs and HDDs on most motherboards.
So it's like the default setting in a lot of computers.
Yeah, it's well established, like a reliable highway system connecting everything.
Ah, okay, I'm with you.
And it's not slow, not at all, with speeds up to 600 millimeters per second. But then we have M2, which is a whole different ballgame.
M.2, that sounds intense. Give me the details.
So imagine switching from that highway we talked about to a high-speed rail line. And that's basically what M.2 does for SSDs specifically. It's all about speed.
Oh, wow. Okay, so like way faster than SATA.
You could say that, and it gets even better. M.2 actually comes in two main flavors. You have SATA M.2, and then you have NVM M.2.
NVM? Yeah.
NVM stands for Non-Volatile Memory Express, and that's where things get really, really interesting.
All right, so NVMe is like the top tier, the super fast option.
Exactly. It's like the Formula One race car of the storage world.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy. So how does it achieve these crazy speeds?
It all comes down to how it connects to your motherboard. You see, NVMe utilizes the PCI Express lanes on your motherboard, the same ones that are usually reserved for graphics cards and other really high-speed components.
So it bypasses all the usual traffic and gets a dedicated fast lane.
Precisely. By bypassing those limitations of SATA, connecting directly through PCI Express, NVMe can reach some truly incredible speeds.
How fast are we talking here?
Theoretically, up to 20 gigabytes per second.
Wow, that's insane. So it seems like NVMe is the way to go if you want the absolute fastest storage possible.
It's definitely the fastest option available, but the source makes an important point, which is that even NVMe is still considerably slower than your computer's main memory, which is known as RAM.
Right, RAM. That's what the computer uses for its immediate tasks, right?
Exactly.
So no matter how fast your storage is, having enough RAM is still absolutely essential.
Absolutely. It's all about balance. Having that fast storage is great, but you need that super fast RAM to work with it effectively.
So we've covered the main types of storage, eMMC, SSDs, HDDs. We've even talked about the importance of connection types like SATA and M2. But how do you actually decide which one's right for you?
It's a great question.
It's like having all these different parts, and you need to figure out how they all fit together to build the best computer for your needs.
Right. Exactly. You need to know which storage type to pick for which purpose.
And that's where it can get a little tricky, especially with all the options out there.
It's true. But the source actually gives us some really good guidance here.
Oh, perfect. So what do they say?
Well, for starters, they say that if you want your operating system to run as smoothly as possible, then speed is absolutely key.
Okay, that makes sense. You want your computer to boot up quickly and run smoothly.
Exactly. And they specifically recommend using an SSD for this, particularly an NVMe M.2 drive.
Right, because that's the super fast connection we talked about earlier.
Exactly. It'll make your entire computer feel so much faster and more responsive.
I can imagine. So that's for the operating system and probably for any software you use a lot too, right?
Yeah, anything you're constantly accessing. But what about all your other data, like your photos, your music library, videos, all those massive files?
Yeah, that's where those big HDDs come in handy, right?
You got it. HDDs are perfect for data storage, especially for large files that you don't access quite as often.
Because they're more cost effective.
Exactly. They give you the best bang for your buck,
Yeah.
storage-wise. And the source even suggests that HDDs might be the better option for long-term archival storage.
Oh, really? I would have thought that SSDs with no moving parts would last longer.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, right?
It does.
Because you'd think with no moving parts, they're less likely to break, right?
Right.
But some experts believe that HDDs, especially those that are designed specifically for archiving, could actually last longer in the very, very long term, like we're talking decades.
Wow, so it's like this whole debate about which one is actually more durable in the end.
Yeah, it's a fascinating discussion, and it really depends on who you ask. But regardless of which side of the argument you fall on, the key takeaway is that having multiple drives can be a really smart move.
Right, so maybe an SSD for your operating system and frequently used programs, and then an HDD for all your data.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance for your needs and your budget.
Yeah, and maybe your peace of mind too, knowing that your data is safe and sound. But all this talk about internal storage makes me wonder about the other big player in the storage game.
Cloud storage.
Exactly. It seems like everyone's using it these days.
It's true. Cloud storage has become incredibly popular. And you know what? That's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
It's easy to get caught up in all the cloud hype, but before we totally jump ship and sail into the digital sunset,
Right.
let's solidify what we've learned about keeping things, well, a little more grounded with those internal storage options.
Absolutely. Always good to have a solid foundation, right?
Yep.
So just to recap, we talked about SSDs.
Just printers.
Yes, the sprinters of the storage world, perfect for that operating system, those frequently used programs, anything where speed is super important.
And then we have those trusty HDDs.
Ah, the workhorse.
The ones that just chug along, giving us that vast storage space for all those files without costing a fortune.
Exactly. Gotta love them.
And it seems like a popular setup is to actually use a combination of both.
That's both worlds, right?
Yeah. Get that SSD speed, what matters most, and then take advantage of the HDD's cost effectiveness for everything else.
Exactly. Tailor it to your needs.
And that's what I'm really taking away from this whole deep dive.
What's that?
It's about understanding these different tools, these options, and then knowing how to use them effectively.
Like choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. I mean, you wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw, right?
Makes sense.
Same way you wouldn't try to cram your entire photo library onto a tiny little eMMC card.
Unless you're really, really good at Tetris, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's all about knowing your needs and making those informed decisions.
Couldn't agree more. Don't be afraid to, pop open that computer, take a peek inside, see what's possible, and choose what works best for you.
Well said. It's been an awesome journey exploring the world of computer storage, from eMMC to SSDs, HDDs, SATA, M.2, the whole shebang.
We covered it all.
And hopefully our listeners are walking away feeling like they can now navigate this world with confidence.
And make those smart storage choices.
Exactly. Well, until next time, happy computing, everyone.
See you next deep dive.